Hello, everybody. I'm Alexei Krabrov, the AI community architect at Neo4j, and here we are on location at Data Days, Texas, in Austin. Amazing data science conference, and one of the speakers is Vaibhav Gupta, who is the founder and CEO of Boundary, Y Combinator startup developing BAML. Welcome, Vaibhav. It's exciting to have you here. I went to your talk. It was really amazing. Lots of questions about it. So tell us a little bit what BAML is.
Yeah, BAML is this really crazy idea my co-founder and I had, which was, what if we added engineering rigor to the world of prompting?
Mm-hmm.
And the way I think about it is, LLMs are really, really beautiful things because they allow us to use this amazingly flexible concept of English.
Mm-hmm.
But we lived in this world not too long ago when we used to write HTML in our string code. And now we realize there's this way better world of React.
Mm-hmm.
BAML brings the flexibility of English, but with the structure of code, kind of like how React did for web development.
Yes, and so I went to your talk.
Yeah.
It was totally amazing. Like basically, you're in the cursor IDE, right?
Yeah.
And like you flawlessly, like you type stuff and it just appears. And you basically tap complete, and so BAML understands the completion of the BAML completions.
Yes.
Right, and so you, from what I understood, again, like maybe imprecise, so you essentially solve this like long and unwieldy strings problem. You decompose it, so you want composable strings. And I must say, I come from functional programming background, and also my biggest grab with this rise of AI is basically voodoo craft and not engineering.
Yeah.
So you're kind of trying to solve all of these problems, right? You give rigorous and kind of types organization. When you talk about composability, which normally people understand when they suffered through a whole bunch of software engineering problems, which a lot of data scientists did not. Right? So you come from an engineering background, and so you bring, and so the rigorous engineering, you bring them to it. So can you just talk about it a little bit? So what really struck me, you tell LLMs to produce bastardized JSON without quotes and with backtick blocks. And then you use algorithms, and I think you said that it's actually much easier. Like LLMs could probably be forced into ugly and awkward JSON output, but you don't want to do that. Can you talk a little bit about how you divide this labor?
Yeah, so BAML has three parts to it that I think are the easiest way to think about. The first one is you write the prompt in BAML, and the prompt you define as a function that takes in parameters and a data model that it spits out. So it looks like regular code.
Yes.
Then you have your model definition where you say, I want to use these models. I want to use GPT-4o. I want to use
your client statement.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a one-line statement where you want to say, I want to use DeepSeek R1. I want to use Anthropic, any model that you want. And then you define the prompt. And then that's where the magic of BAML begins. So the first thing is, if you're in VS Code, you actually can click a button and open a live preview of your prompt right there. So if you have images in your prompt, you can see it.
Yes.
And then you get to press this button that's called run test. And when you run the test in VS Code, you can just, or cursor or whatever you are using, you can actually just see the outputs of the model right there and just see, oh, did my prompt get better or worse? So you have an eval system built in. But part of this is, I always believe that models are amazing creatures, but they're really not well guarded. And the way to fix that problem is not to force everyone to magically prompt engineer, but rather to have some algorithms do that work for you. And part of the invention that we had was, we don't use JSON for our parsing. We have this new algorithm called schema-aligned parsing, or SAP, or SAP, that extracts the output of the model and pulls it out into the structured data that you said the function should return. So if you were extracting a receipt and you wanted your total to only be the dollar value, you would say your total is an integer. And the model might split out a floating point number and will convert it to an integer for you.
Right.
Or you might say, I want the model to spit out code. And the model might spit out code in markdown format, and we'll parse that as a string so you don't have to think about it.
Right. And so I think your point is like, you don't want the model to struggle with this. If it returns an actual fraction, which is a rational number, you don't want to convert to floating point because you lose, like you were a hedge fund, you don't want to lose microcents. You want to get the exact number.
Exactly.
And that will be much easier from the model itself, right? It's bad at arithmetics. So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And so, can you talk a little bit about the demos? Like in the beginning, you did a bunch of interesting, so like it looked like there is an image on the right-hand side, and you put something in the image field, like a receipt, and the tables get magically
populated,
filled right in front of your eyes with streaming fields. How does that work?
It actually does two things. So one magical thing about inventing a new syntax that is really easy for humans to read is it is actually really easy for LLMs to read and generate.
Yes.
So all we were doing there is we had two prompts that were also written in BAML. The first prompt took the image, let's say, of a resume, and it defined the data model in BAML
Yes.
that would describe that image. And then we ran that data model in BAML to pull out all the data.
Yes.
And BAML supports streaming from the get-go.
Yes.
So if JSON isn't fully completed while you're streaming, we error correct that. So then you can build a beautiful table while it's streaming and show you all the data.
Is it just a demo or is it a product?
It's open source. You can go build it yourself.
Because I think we have a similar problem. We build a Gen AI app on top of Neo4j.
Yeah.
And people tell us, whom can I give my money? I want
Yeah.
to buy this, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, this is just a demo, it's on GitHub, right?
We
But-
have some people paying for it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. This is good, right? Because like to me, it just looks and then up and user product right there.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people will find uses for this.
Yeah.
So let's kind of zoom in a little bit on what you said. Syntax defines thinking. Are you familiar with the Worf-Sapir hypothesis in linguistics?
What is it?
So Worf-Sapir hypothesis is, I think, probably at least 89 years old. So it's basically a statement in linguistics where Worf actually was an accountant. He was not even a linguist. He was a hobbyist linguist, and he thought of this idea that language defines your thinking. So French people think in one way, and Russian people think in another way, and Indian people think in a third way, because the language is like guardrails, which constrains their thinking. And of course, because that leads to a lot of question, like which language is better, like why are the British so successful?
Yeah.
Maybe that language is better. So this time, modern times, we kind of look down a little bit. And so there was a period of time people kind of felt like, no, this is not true. But now it's coming back in linguistics because it's obvious to anybody who speaks multiple languages, that language, like I think in different ways in English than I think in Russian.
Yes.
Right? And so I wonder, like, it's really interesting to me that you kind of hit upon this idea, so that syntax defines thinking. So what do you want to achieve with the BAML syntax? How do you want people to think about this?
That's a interesting one. I haven't thought about that, but I think the way I think about it is always syntax with code. Code to me is a way of expressing ideas. It's like an art form,
Yes.
right? And when code is an art form, you have to think about what medium you're using based on the emotions you want to convey.
Yes.
So when I'm writing a website, I want to build interactivity.
Yes.
So I want a language that makes interactivity and async really first class and easy to go do.
Yes.
JavaScript. That's why they have nameless Lambda functions, because you can just write a handler for a button on click right there, and it's beautiful. It works.
Yep.
I don't have to make a new function with a name. In the world of LLMs, there's a couple of things you want. You want things where strings are composable. Strings are more than just strings,
Yes.
right? You want type safety in some way. You want dedention to happen by default. You want to be able to swap out models easily. And you want images and multimodality to work beautifully without having to think about whether or not Anthropic supports URLs or OpenAI supports URLs.
Right.
We just want to make it so that when you think about using an LLM, you just think about your problem, not about the mechanisms of the underlying HTTP transformations.
Yes.
And we just want to make it beautiful to write LLM code.
I think it's really like translating Worf-Sapir hypothesis into coding.
Yeah.
Right? Like you want people to think, to enable their kind of application with the right syntax,
Yeah.
right? So that was great. One thing I wanted to ask, so, in the Bay Area, we had a lot of folks from DSP
Yeah.
speaking, and so their slogan is similar: program, not prompt your
Yeah.
LLM, right? So, and they write optimizers, which optimize prompts. And if I got you correctly, you're basically saying like, models are not good at generating prompts, right? So talk a little bit about this. How do you see like DSP approach versus BAML? How can they interact? Like, whether they compete?
I think the idea of writing prompt optimizers makes sense, but I don't believe we should be optimizing the space of English.
Yes.
English doesn't have a really good manifold where you can really navigate. It has so many parameters. I think you need to optimize in something that is flexible like English, but structured like code. So if you are going to optimize code and optimize prompts, it's better to optimize structured English,
Right.
not pure English. And
Right.
that's where we think the play is. And also, I don't believe everyone's going to use Python.
Right.
Like, Python is amazing, but the world is not going to be Python. And like, BAML is designed and already does work with every existing programming language. So it's not that like DSPy or anything is necessarily good or bad. I just think it's another tool. But I think before people start optimizing auto-generating prompts, they should just look at their prompts and write their first few prompts. Because
Can you use DSP to optimize BAML?
No, because DSPy is only optimized for English. But we have a thing that can optimize BAML prompts for you.
Okay.
And it auto-generates structured prompts
Interesting.
with test cases.
My world just expanded because I'm a huge fan of typed programming.
Okay.
Composability and all of this stuff, right? So I'm really happy that you're bringing rigor, software engineering back. And so what I also noticed, I wonder, like, you've been a software engineer.
Yeah.
So do you think AI? So now there is these people who say like, well, we're going to be AI engineers, right? And like, yeah, it's like data science. This is like some different kind. And some people say, no, this is just going to be absorbed to proper software engineering because most systems are engineered by engineers, like, right? Like engineers build good stuff, which just works.
Yes.
And AI, like you said, why do you accept 5% failure if it's like a huge success when anywhere else 5% of your bridge collapsing will not be good,
Yeah.
right? So like, I'm wondering, do you think that the engineering will be a separate area or it will be a part of software engineering?
So
do you place yourself as software engineering or AI engineer?
I will admit, when the term AI engineer was first used, I remember having a huge disagreement with my co-founder because I fought him hard on like, that's not a real term. You can't call anyone an AI engineer. I was offended, right? Because I was like, I built algorithms for 10 years. I did real stuff.
Right.
AI, you can't just prompt engineer and call that AI engineering.
Right.
But I think those are the same people that said, hey, I built C for 10 years.
Right.
Python isn't real programming.
Right.
And now there are major companies built on Python and JavaScript.
That's right.
And I think as the world goes on, more systems will be using prompts than less.
Yep.
And at some point, it will require software engineering rigor to write good prompts.
Yes.
And hopefully BAML plays a part of that. But I don't think it would be wrong to say that it will be a term. And I think it can be a term in specialty, just like front-end engineering is a specialty. And there will be people that span the whole spectrum, but I think there will always be specialists.
Yeah. So again, like, I'm super impressed. I'm a huge fan. So like, my take away from your talk was like, everybody should drop everything they're doing and immediately use this. Like, but why would you not be using this, right? So tell me, like,
Why would you not use it?
What's the obstacle to adoption of this, and what are your plans this year to bring more people onto BAML?
Yeah, so I mean, it took us over a year. It took us like 8 or 9 months to build even the core pieces of BAML that make it so that you're so excited about it today, which I'm really humbled by. But I think the plans for us is honestly just keep on building a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
There's this video on YouTube that talks about the TypeScript when they were building out TypeScript.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the creators said a very interesting thing that I very much agree with, which is as a team, you have finite resources. You can either spend your resources on marketing or on building.
Yes.
And we as a team are focused on building and shipping amazing things.
Yes.
And we hope the community continues to use it and love it and hopefully spread the word. And we're going to spend all our time building and making BAML better.
And you mentioned that it's all open source, which is amazing to me, right? So, like, from my standpoint, we're building open source ecosystems, right? I work with Linux Foundation, AI Alliance, and others. So I think, anybody in open source should be able to kind of come together and use tools like this.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting. Like, we will be kind of putting together this kind of collaborator called Open Source AI Knowledge Stack, or OAKS. And so I hope, we can, definitely include BAML into that.
We'd love to, yeah.
And we include invite everybody to check out BAML and just like give it a whirl. And I think it's like, I'm going to do it. It's exciting.
Thank you so much, Alex. It was really nice of you.
Thanks for building this. Thanks for sharing. Looking forward to your success.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.